Um, The first order of business is if there's public comment to any issues not on the agenda.
No, okay.
So seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. They're attached. If you've read them, or if you can read them now and someone make a motion to approve them.
I'll approve the minutes.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so those are approved. So number 4, business items, appoint board secretary treasurer, Ronnie.
Right,
Or when do we do your report?
we skipped that today.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Getting right down to business. So Jen Nettles has volunteered, she's not here today, she's dealing with emergency next door, but she's volunteered to act as the secretary on the board of directors. We have been short on our executive committee lately, and we need to have more officers to be able to conduct our business, such as signing checks. So she has volunteered. We have the secretary and treasurer position both available right now, but Jen has volunteered to also participate on the audit committee, so she cannot serve as the treasurer. So we are looking for the board to approve her appointment as the secretary to the board at this time, unless there are other people that are interested in serving in that capacity.
I'm going to move that we appoint Jen secretary. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Jen, your secretary.
She'll be ecstatic about it. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is review and consider approval of version A of the proposed bylaw modifications. We have 2 versions in the packet attached, and version A was prepared by the TMA staff, including myself and our legal counsel here, Michael Conneran. This is in collaboration with the TMA Board of Directors and the Emeryville Task Force appointed by the City Council. Version B will be presented by Ken Bukowski on behalf of the request of Director Collins. Just to first go through kind of recap of what version A of the bylaws includes. Since they were last presented to the board, we have made just a few changes. And the purpose of the revising the bylaws of the organization was to ensure equitable representation from both the commercial and residential contributors, while maintaining representation from those large employers who theoretically represent a significant portion of the merry-go-round ridership. The governance structure proposed in version A is based on recommendations from the EGR task force appointed by the City Council. I'll just go quickly through the membership classes. Each membership class is protected, meaning members from one membership class do not have the power to make changes to
Could I
another
suggest a
membership
point of
class.
order? Could I suggest a point of, I think we should first decide what the process for changing them is going to be before we get into the details, because I think that's the crux of what's going to happen here is how are they going to be changed? That's what we should talk about first.
Okay, we will.
Ken, we've got an agenda.
We will go through that.
Okay, all right, do it whatever you want.
We're going to go ahead and represent the change, show the changes in version A, and then we'll go through the process in which we followed.
Well, then I
Add
would
those
want to
changes.
suggest the changes in version B, and then you can do that, if that's okay.
Okay. Going back to the membership, each membership class is protected. And per Article 12 of the bylaws, the Board of Directors has the authority to amend the bylaws with a 2/3 vote of the board, so long as the changes which would adversely impact the voting rights of members be ratified by a majority of a quorum of the members in that respective membership class. So the changes to the membership classes and the governance are as proposed. Number 1, reduce the corporate member class size and board representation by 1, and allow a director designation by the next highest payer should a corporate member neglect to do so. To the business member class, we have increased the elected director positions from 1 to 2. We have modified the residential member class to include a new class, which is a Class A residential members. The purpose of this was to allow those who are required by the city and the conditions of approval with the city to maintain their membership status with the TMA, while eliminating their ability for them to appoint a director to the board. We have a new membership class Class B residential members, which would include those 2 residential property owners appointed by Emeryville, the city of Emeryville, to serve as members and directors on the board. And we've also added an addition of a new employer members class to include the top 5 employers in the city that do not qualify as corporate members. The employer members would elect 1 director to serve on the board. We've eliminated the dormant public member class, and we've also modified Section 4 membership dues to allow fees and dues from all membership classes to be paid through the PBID assessments or directly to the corporation. We're also proposing that we eliminate the requirement for the audit committee to hold 2 meetings per year. The committee should only be required to meet as necessary to complete the review of the audited financial statements and tax documents. However, we will be required to report to the board once per year in connection with the presentation to the board of the financial statements and tax documents. Ballot forms were distributed to only those members whose voting rights were adversely impacted, which included both the corporate members and the residential member class. The corporate members, because of their class size and representation on the board of directors, would be reduced by 1, and the residential members because they would no longer have an elected position on the board. For the corporate member class, only 6 ballots were distributed. 1 member was unresponsive. Of the 6 ballot forms distributed to the corporate members, 5 ballot forms were returned, submitted with an affirmative vote. This affirmative vote represents a majority of the quorum of the corporate member class, which is sufficient to adopt the proposed changes. For the residential member class, there were only 4 members, of which only 3 ballot forms were sent out. 1 member was unresponsive. Ballot forms were received from all 3 residential members who received them, all of which were affirmative. The public member class is vacant, therefore not required to vote on the proposed changes to eliminate the membership class. The business members were not required to vote on the changes proposed to their membership class description, as there were no adverse impacts to the voting rights of those members. Now, version B of the bylaws is also included in the agenda packet, and we are allowing Ken Bukowski to present changes that they are proposing. Hopefully keep it to 10 minutes so that we have time for Q&A if needed.
Okay, well, first thing I want to say is if you're presenting the recommendation of the task force, all of these changes that you're proposing now were not presented to the task force, so I don't think that that's valid on the space. The changes you just proposed were not before the task force.
Ken, please present your version. There will be public comment
Yes,
on
sir.
both
Yes,
after.
sir. Okay. Basically, these bylaws have been revised to be fair, okay? Everybody on the board would have to be elected. 4 of the existing board members would retain their seats for another year, so we're not trying to just wipe the board out, okay? And then you would be elected among your class of members. So the definition of a corporate member would be changed to those who pay more than $10,000. So they would have 3 seats on the board. Business members would have 2 seats, and the residents would have 2 seats. And they would have 2-year terms, and they would be elected in staggered. 1 year, half of them would be elected, the other. The most important part of it is that it would require a unanimous vote of the board before the assessments could be recommended to the city council. That's real important. I guess I should tell you that the result of the PBID election, with 1,400 ballots counted, 1,100 voted no and 300 voted yes. So you have a substantial majority of property owners who do not agree with this assessment. And I think the reason they don't agree with the assessment is because of the automatic increase. That's what it said in the ballot. So it says in the management plan that these bylaws will be approved by the members, the full membership. So you're suggesting methods of approval that don't agree with the language in the ballot proposal. And then, so that's basically it. I mean, that's just the summary of it. And so here it is. So I don't think it's lawful for you to adopt the changes. It says in section 13, it says as described in the government code 5034. And 5034 says that the full membership has to vote for the changes because you're changing everybody's voting rights. Thank you.
I think the idea said this is supposed to be equitable to those who are paying to put those little buses on the road. As I understood it from watching the video of the meeting that went on, that of the $100 being spent, supposedly all of the business members, that would be both the corporate members and the rest of us members, were paying roughly 69% of those dollars. The individual homeowners were paying roughly 20 to 21%, and there was another group called the industrial people paying 8 to 8%. Now, of that 70% that the corporate members were paying and the rest of the property owners, it was supposedly a breakdown of roughly 60-40 of some percent, like that. But what it comes out is the corporate membership at that point, including 6 to 7 members, however they're counting it now, they're only paying 40% of the actual dollars going into the running of the bus system. So how do they end up with 6 to 5 votes? They should have 4 at best. And if you move the 5 members or 6 members down to 4 members, you even have them paying less of the money that's paid in to run the operations of the system. So it's a little bit of a reverse conundrum. So how do we go about just first saying who should get the votes for the money they pay into it? And that seems to be the biggest divide, would be between the corporate members and the other members who pay into it from the business class. The corporate members end up getting a automatic vote that comes from a process that started a quarter of a century ago, and it sort of started, it wasn't actually voted on by anybody, because the original TMA was actually just a private club, as it were, which was fine. As long as I didn't pay it, I don't care who paid for what share of the bus. Now that I'm brought into it, I do indeed care what I pay. And I think many people care what they pay into it. That would both be the corporate members. And I don't even know why there's a corporate member anymore. I just don't quite get it. And the people who pay into it via they're owning their homes. So how you set up this, who is the membership, is not fair nor correct. How did you do that? How did that come about that the corporate members are X, they're 5, and they have those 5 members are paying what money into it? Even if you just use that crude, seems to me they would get nowhere near the numbers of positions on the board. So why they're there
So
without a vote?
Francis, you've asked a question. Because it's an important issue, we're going to follow a little more the prescripted order. So what I'd like to do is open the floor for public comment on this issue. We'll hear if the public wants to speak. We'll close that public comment. And then we, as the board members, can speak more about it. You've already done that, but we can speak and talk, consider the public comment if there is any, and anything we talk about. So let's do it that way.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
We're usually pretty informal,
very
but I
sorry.
want to make sure we're doing things appropriately. So I'd like to open the floor for public comment, if any, on this subject.
I have a question. So Ken brought up the voting of, it's always a little bit confusing to me, but he said that in the ballot measure, there was 1,100 out of 1,400 responses. And then he went on to say that it was 1 vote. To make changes, it required, or it was weighted as 1 vote per payor. It wasn't skewed towards assessment value. Could you elaborate on that and explain that?
Well, why don't we have Mike, the TMA's attorney,
Actually,
talk
again,
about
this is the city's vote, so this isn't the body that conducted that assessment vote, right? That assessment was put in place by the city of Emeryville. As I understand it, their assessment process, the votes are weighted by the amount you pay in. So the numbers Ken gave were based on who voted.
The actual numerical number.
Numerical number of ballots,
Votes,
but the way the statute and the ordinance read, those are actually are calculated based on how much each entity is paying. So the result of that assessment vote was based on accordance with law, as I understand it, with counting the ballots, counting the votes based on, that are weighted based on the amount that people are paying. So a majority of the value of the, or people representing the majority of the payment of the assessment voted in favor of it.
So it's basically a valued
Yes,
ballot.
That's right.
yes,
It's not a numerical.
right.
And does the ordinance, does the law state that that's the way it's supposed to be done?
Yes.
It's very clear and consistent.
Yes, I don't think there's any question of that.
But the majority of people voted against the whole system.
See, what I'm saying is that within
Yeah.
the TMA, then it's one vote per parcel. To adopt the assessment, it's a weighted vote, but within the TMA, it's one parcel, one vote.
So what rules, the TMA or the?
So let's talk about our bylaws. The question here is, should we change the bylaws, and if so, how? And there were two different versions. So
Right.
maybe
But
Mike,
I
you
just-
can,
So just to put this in context, the way the statute reads is, it's the Property and Business Improvement District law. The city can put in place this assessment, they can collect the money, and then if they choose, they can contract with a nonprofit corporation representing, I mean, the way the law was written, business owners, to spend the money. And the basic concept was, in the original framework, is that the business owners were getting together to have the city collect an assessment and then spend it in a manner, based on the management plan, but that this is something where the business community was deciding how it was going to be spent. The city has broadened that mission a little bit to add in residential members, but it's still, the TMA is a separate nonprofit corporation. They can govern themselves however they wish. And the city is simply collecting the money and then has a contract to pay the money to the TMA to expend it in compliance with the plan of how service is going to be provided. So they're really two different processes. The voting and the collection of the assessment, that is entirely within the city's purview. The interest of the TMA here is simply that they are the beneficiaries. They will enter into a funding agreement, which they've had for the last 15 years that you've had the assessment in place. The city, will look at the plan of what kind of service the TMA is going to provide, and then decide, yes, we're going to fund that, and then they pay them the money. I think it's twice a year, right, over to the TMA to spend.
Who actually wrote the ballot language? Was it the city?
City.
The city.
Yeah.
And they have the legal right to develop the ballot language.
Oh, they're the only ones that can.
And the terms.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question about applying?
The original corporate membership did not come from anybody, but it was a private group that were doing it until you and I, for various reasons, was dragged into the process. Once we got dragged into the process, that's where the glitch became about corporate membership versus our membership versus what is fair. Now we have another entity involved, which is the citizens, the
The
homeowners.
residential.
Yeah. So this process, this Measure A, not the Measure A, it sounds like, the first one is not fair in terms of who has the power to vote on what. That's the first thing.
Doing public comment?
yeah, so we need, Francis, we'll get to our discussion. So
Any other public?
do you have any other, does anyone else have any other public comment?
Yeah, these bylaws were never duly adopted to start with. And so I've been asking for a copy of the requisite vote of the members when it was adopted. It's never been provided. And
Because
so,
it doesn't exist.
yeah, so what you're talking about adversely affecting the rights of members who, the bylaws were never lawfully adopted. So I think that's an issue.
Any other public comment? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing and then open it for board discussion.
Just had a question on what Ken was saying of not lawfully adopted. Is there, it's a private nonprofit organization?
Right.
Is that a statement that's accurate or not accurate?
I have no idea, I don't know what he's basing that on. There was a set of bylaws that were prepared. As far as I know, they were presented to a meeting of the board of directors and they were voted on and approved.
And
I
that's-
wasn't at the meeting.
Right.
So,
So I understand that to be the correct process that
Right.
has been followed.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's a little hitch here. The first bylaws that you worked off of didn't involve public money at all. There was no money that came from the property owners taking out their taxes. It was money contributed by the people who wanted, the first people who started had, a couple people were putting buses in to collect their employees. Then a few of them got together and says, we'll form this little group to do it. There was no collection of money from anybody else, you, me, anybody else, except they were contributing to do it, and they formed this TMA. They put their bylaws in there. Then it became one that we got the vote on, which says we would be willing to pay into it, which we did. The bylaws from there to here were never correctly put in, and the thing that just rode along with the corporate membership. That corporate membership then, corporate membership when they made the transition 10, 15 years ago, and the corporation membership right now, as we're trying to put in the bylaws, is not quite fair. And there probably is a way to solve all of it, but it won't be solved if the corporate membership just it keeps insisting that they go along and have more power than other people do, or they deserve to have, and indeed, if just the general property ownership has the power that they should have, is collectively, their rights will always be protected as a matter of course.
Well, since Melinda asked about my comment, can I
Hey,
clarify
Ken,
that?
we close public comment, okay? So,
She asked a question about my comment, so I have to clarify it, right? I mean, when you have bylaws, they have to initially be adopted by the full membership, and they were never
Ken,
adopted.
we've heard that.
You
Come
didn't
on.
hear it, you heard it now.
We've heard it already.
So,
So, I'd like to make some points. Before the most recent 15-year renewal of the TMA that did have a majority vote, there have been 2 PBID votes over the prior 15 years, and this set of bylaws were the way the TMA operated both of those times. This is how, these are our bylaws.
Were they voted in by anybody correctly? at any
Francis,
time?
I wasn't here
They
for
were
that.
adopted at a meeting of the Board of Directors at the beginning of the first PBID.
it's
So,
supposed to be adopted
the
by the
board gets
Do you have
membership.
that adoption? Do you have the
I
thing
don't
that say
know.
it was adopted? Because we've been looking for it. I cannot find it. I cannot find that document that everybody voted on and said, this is what's going to happen. We have corrected what happened when we were just a private entity. We moved it to a public entity involving a lot of other people in their process.
There's no public
I
entity.
can't find it.
Francis, there's no
Francis,
public entity.
we're a
You're mixing
private,
about
not-for-profit.
I
three
know,
different
I
concepts.
no. When you did it before, now this is a quasi-public entity
No,
that
it's
we're
not.
doing.
It's a nonprofit corporation.
Where does the power
It
come
always
to get?
has
Where
been.
does the power come from it to get its money?
The city, we
The
went
city.
through that.
That's what we're trying to tell you. So you're
Okay,
involved
well,
with the
you-
city.
Well,
It's a contract
Francis,
law.
you're mixing a lot of concepts together, okay? The TMA has had one set of articles of incorporation. From the very beginning, when the corporate entities that were required to form it in order to mitigate the traffic impacts from their developments, and as a condition of their development approvals, they were required to form the TMA. It was formed as a nonprofit corporation. It is the same nonprofit corporation that it has always been, okay? There was a set of bylaws adopted when it was first put into place, and before the first PBID was put in, those bylaws were modified
By who? Who
By
would
by
have
the Board of
adopted?
Directors.
And when did the city tell all the people who were? the-
Excuse me, okay, the bylaws were adopted. That set of bylaws is what they have been operating on for the last 15 years, and we are now proposing to modify those bylaws in accordance with the terms of the existing bylaws. So there's been a continuous operation. It's the same corporation. It is a nonprofit corporation, which, as I was explaining, under the PBID law, is a perfectly acceptable method of expending the money. It's done all over the state of California, okay? It's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit corporation. It's not a government entity, okay? The only tie is that the city operates the assessment, and collects the money, and by contract, pays the money to the nonprofit corporation, which then runs the service. So there's really been no change. We're just changing how. It is completely within the purview of the nonprofit corporation as to how it is governed. It's up to them. I understand, you have principles of how you think, but it's entirely up to the corporation how it wants to do its
Right, the
business.
members have to approve that, not the board to start with. That's the
Excuse
problem.
me,
Ken, please.
I'm sorry, but I have to speak.
I'll
on
take
that.
care of it, Ken. Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay.
So I was
When was
speaking.
the vote?
Francis, I was not done, okay?
Sure.
So, these are our bylaws. We're considering changing them. The board has been interested in changing them to reflect more equitably the constituency of payers that will be in place under this new P-bid. And the city has had great interest in believing that there's an equitable application to that too. They formed a task force, which you sat on and which you sat on and others were in, that spent a lot of time on this. And this is exactly the constituents of the board that task force came up with. Okay?
You didn't present all of those changes.
Ken, if you're going to talk, we're going to ask you to leave.
Well,
We're conducting a meeting.
meeting. Okay? So that's
We're conducting a meeting, Ken. You cannot talk whenever you want in a public meeting, all right?
Well, you're not telling the truth.
One more time, Ken, I'm going to ask you to
Well,
leave.
so ask me to leave. Call the police. That's what you're gonna have to
Ken,
do.
let's get this meeting functional. Okay, let's just chill.
So we have the ability to change our own bylaws. Our discussions here, which you've been part of, although France has been missing a lot of meetings, but you've been part of, we have had interest in seeing if we could adopt something that we felt was fair and reasonable and allowed us to run the system effectively, because that seems to be the primary goal of everybody, to do that and reflect the constituency better. And that is what the version A is meant to be, and it's consistent with the task force. And therefore, I'm very comfortable with it. Furthermore, the classes who lose power in this, who have to vote in the majority and surrender that power, they cannot be forced to surrender that power. But the two classes that are losing power have both voted saying, we are willing to if this is the version that's put in place. That's meaningful to me. That wasn't automatic. Any one of us could say, I don't want to. So that's occurred. And so those are very potent, strong things that I look at when I'm going to vote on this. So that's the end of what I wanted to say.
Okay. Let's forget the fact that I've never been able to find any vote about changes to the bylaws 15 years ago, or the ones we created, and they were never forced. The big people who were making projects that had something to do about helping with transportation were not forced to make this committee up, ever. I don't know where you got that.
That's incorrect.
When did they do that?
We have some properties that their conditions of approval require that we're a member of TMA.
That's after this was all done, not beforehand.
After what was all done?
After the system was set up by these people, they weren't forced to be in it in the very beginning. There's a lot of people that aren't forced into it now.
There was a nonprofit corporation formed, and then the city, as a condition of approval, required developers to participate.
No, they didn't with everybody, they did not.
Well,
Some people were actually, the truth
It's
is,
really
some
not
of them
relevant.
did and some of them did not have to be
Okay, so
involved.
this is history from 20 years ago.
Let's leave it at that. Now we have this situation we're at right now. Let's cut to the chase. How do we make this thing fair to everybody that's paying money into it, and that the people who are paying money into it pay and have that much power they have for what they pay into it? That's the end of it all. That's all we have to do here, and then we're done. So therefore, that has to be related to the dollars we're putting into it.
Francis,
That's all it has to
you
do.
obviously have the ability to decide it's unfair and vote no if you wish. Everyone else will be able to make their own decision.
That's correct, they can do that, but they should know what fair and what is not unfair to begin with. And then who is it that's voting on this? Do we have the members here that are the
The
new
board
members?
votes on this.
5 members or 7 members from the old board?
The current board.
To be a
No,
two-thirds vote of the
the
board.
current board, we haven't changed the bylaws.
So
it's the
that
current
there's
board.
7
Two-thirds of the
members on the
board.
current board that are corporate members.
Correct.
So they're the
Two-thirds
ones
of the
that are
board.
voting on whether this is correct or
Two-thirds
not.
of the
Two-thirds of the
board.
board, whatever member category they're in. You're one of them.
So right now, the people who have all the power in this are the 7 corporate members.
No, the members of the board of directors. The entire board, including the business member, there's a vacant residential seat. All of the members vote together, a 2/3 vote is required to amend the bylaws. And as Ronnie explained, if the vote impairs the voting ability of any class of members, that class also needs to approve it. Those 2 classes that are adversely affected have submitted ballots to approve the change. So right now, the only thing needed to be done is, if you want to approve this, is that the board of directors vote by a 2/3 vote with all of the directors participating.
Right now, the vote is by the old board, that 7 corporate members, 1 member that represents all the other business members, that's I, okay? And there was a member here that used to be a member of the, he was here because he was in the
Chamber?
Chamber of Commerce. Is that the board that's now voting?
Yes,
The board-
it's the board of the corporation.
So now, so you're saying that I at some point voted away, somewhere I said somebody that's okay, that all the power that my people have, that I represent, I voted it away? I
No,
said it's okay?
You were actually getting another vote. So it is,
So, but now this vote is controlled by 7 members of the corporate entities that now run the place, and they're gonna have the power to vote in this new,
it's their corporation. They get to govern the corporation.
that's what the problem is.
The corporation governs itself. That's just, any corporation is
This
governed by the
corporation
board
now
of
has
directors.
new members in it.
It does not have new members in it. The corporation, the board, the bylaws of the corporation provide for who the members are and who they're not.
No. There's this new thing here, the city had a vote.
City has nothing to do with the management of
The
this
city had the
corporation.
vote that got these people involved in it. Okay?
No, this is a corporation. The city does not have anything to do with the governance or management of this
I
corporation.
know that.
Well, you're saying the city had a vote and it changed the membership of the corporation. It didn't.
The
The
ci-
membership is the same as it was, you know,
We just added 4,500 members.
10 years.
Jesus Christ. So you say the hangman just stays here.
I don't know.
When that city, we just had a new vote. We had the new vote about the P-bid, and what it effectively done is brought the homeowners into it so they would pay a share of it.
Into the assessment.
That's right.
Right.
Now,
That's
they're
the
gonna make
city's-
their vote.
That's the city's business.
I understand.
Okay.
So now, just this, the old group is gonna make a vote of how that P-bid is set up for the new P-bid money being paid into it.
Okay, all right, let's make sure we're clear on our terminology, okay? The city governs the P-bid, the city collects the assessment, the city determines how that assessment is paid. This nonprofit corporation governs itself. The members of the board of directors of the corporation have to vote. They're the ones that determine the membership of the corporation, the vote, you know, the way the seats on the board of directors are allocated, and that's what we're trying to do here, is have the corporation govern itself. City does not manage this corporation. It cannot tell this corporation what
Will you
what
say
to
that
do.
one more time, and then don't say it again, and then we won't have to say it again?
Okay.
The city had a new vote, which they dragged thousands of people in, most of them unwilling to have to pay into the P-bid, correct?
Yes,
They did that. Now you're saying that those people, most who don't want to be here, have no power what to say about the power of the new board that's coming in that's supposedly going to spend their money.
I didn't say that. What I said was, if you read the new bylaws, they provide for the city council to appoint 2 directors to represent the interests of the residential members on this private board. Those 2 votes will then represent that new group of people who are now paying into the P-bid.
So now
But they're
this-
not members of this corporation.
So the city council voted to take it and say that 5 of these people can be members from the corporate board, regardless of the amount of money they may have paid, are paying into the P-bid now.
Francis, Mike has said 10 times, the city doesn't decide what our governance is. So you keep saying the city has decided these things. They haven't. They haven't.
He just told me the city said that we had to put in these members.
No,
No?
Who decided that?
we haven't decided anything. What the version A of the bylaws is a proposed change that the task force recommended as being equitable to represent those new residential payers.
And what about the people who pay into it presently, and the amount of money is paid into those of us who they're paying for it? That would include just the old members, my group, and let's call them your group.
Francis, your group was overrepresented on the task force in terms of participation. And this is what the task force came up with.
Let's say that that's true. Let's say that.
Well, it is true. We don't need to let's say it. It is true.
Let's say right now we make it fair. We make this thing fair to the actual money being paid in by the actual people who pay it.
Okay.
That's all I want to do.
That's what you've said you're interested in. You'll be able to place your vote. We need to open the discussion to allow other board members to speak or ask questions if they wish.
May I ask one question? It's not a public comment. Could you simply state again what the proposed membership will be made of the new board of directors Because I know you have different classes. You had
Version A?
version A that you want to vote on here.
Okay, so the corporate members would change from 7 members to 6,
So
and they would
6
all have
corporate.
directors on the board, serving on the board.
Right?
The business member class would go from 1 elected director to 2 elected directors.
Okay.
Class A residential members would have no representation on the board.
Okay.
And those
no
are the
question.
HOAs that are,
Yeah.
that are conditioned. Class B residential members they will have 2 members who are elected by the city council, or city of Emeryville,
Appointed by the council.
appointed by the council.
So
And
is
the
it true,
city-
Ronnie, that if you were a homeowner in a condo that had an
They're not
HOA,
involved in it.
that
Right.
condo owner could
Correct.
ask the city to pick them?
Right. So the HOAs themselves, the
Yes.
organization, so
Got-
there's a
got
little
that.
bit, okay.
2 residential.
Exactly. 2
Appointed.
residential who will serve as directors, so there are 2 members and 2 directors. And then there's the employer members, who are 5 top employers with the highest number of employees in the city of Emeryville, and they will elect 1 director.
Okay, so the employer will have.
11 member
One.
board.
Okay, got it, so 11 total. And to pass any changes, will it be 2/3 or majority vote of the new board of directors if it's adopted?
2/3, we're not changing the,
Yeah, that's not proposed to change. So
Right.
if version A was adopted, any subsequent changes require 2/3 of that group that Ronnie just listed.
So in the plain math, how many numbers does that work?
On the
out to
current, on the
No, no,
if you have
or
11.
future.
11.
2/3 would be
11,
7?
Seven.
I think.
be? Okay, 7 for a change.
And I do want to clarify that there are currently only 7 directors on the board. So there are 6 corporate members and 1 business member.
Okay, any other questions or comments by the board?
The next thing I want to do with the numbers he just he asked you, of those groups, of the 6 members that would be now put onto the board of the corporate, there is, incidentally, the corporate people and the business, us, everybody's appraisal comes from the property they sit in. Not Disney, the property that they own in Emeryville that's owned by,
Assessed Emeryville property.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So now, the assessment of that property for those 6 people is what relative to the whole?
I would have to calculate it, I don't know.
Because that's where the vote's supposed to come from. The money you put in it, it's not democracy, it's money you're paying for the service.
Weighted vote, value. One other clarification, please. Of the business, 2 directors, members, how are those chosen? How would they
They're
be
elected
chosen? They're
by the
elected,
business class of members.
Which is how it is now.
Currently.
elected by just the business,
Just the
class,
business
all
class of
businesses?
members.
No, just
Whoever-
the 5.
Only if you are a property owner in the city of Emeryville, a commercial property that is not a corporate member, not an employer member, and not a residential member. It would have to be the business member class.
Okay, I understand. And that would be a separate vote where the businesses.
We would run an election.
And then on the corporate, is that based on corporations that own property or corporations that do business here?
All property owners.
Corporate property owners. So what is the actual difference between a corporate property owner and a business property?
None.
It's just, the term corporate members is just what the organization established long ago. It's just those that are paying, property owners that are paying the highest amount of contributions to the
Okay,
organization.
so you could actually say that corporate owners are the 6th highest, and business owners could be, you could own a $10,000 piece of property or a $1 million piece of property, but you don't live here.
Well, you can also live here, it doesn't
Right.
disqualify, living here doesn't
But you
disqualify.
own, you
Yes.
don't
Right.
rent.
Right.
Correct.
Rent is the residential category.
It's the people who get taxed that are assessed, right? So you gotta own it to get assessed.
Okay, so really, if you look at it, corporate is 6th biggest. Business is not defined by big, and residential is not defined by big. When I say big is assessed value, they're really the same class.
Just what you pay into it.
They're really the same class. Yes? No?
I don't know what that means.
Well, corporate, you said corporate ownership. It's the 6th largest assessed corporate owners. They're not individuals, they're corporations. Whether it's Pixar, Novartis, Wareham, okay. Business could be somebody that owns a condo or a house, or somebody that owns a commercial
no.
No,
building.
business is you and I, we own our thing, whether you're a corporation or not. We are that other class of business. It's, everybody is just owners of property.
Okay,
The whole thing is like a patina to try to confuse.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask again. Any other question or comments from the board about version A or version B?
No, just observe that version A looks consistent with the legal structure that we are under and the bylaws that we have now for how to operate.
So
We need a
we need a motion,
motion on the floor to,
I would motion to approve version A.
and I will second that. I'm going to take a hand vote, just so everyone can be clear. All in favor of approving version A change to the bylaws, please raise your hand. Okay, got that? All opposed? And I don't think there's anyone else to abstain.
How many people here voted for it?
5.
5.
So that meets the requirement?
The 5 people who voted for it, who are they? Are they all corporate members?
Well,
Yeah,
you're the only other non-corporate member today, Francis.
I simply asked a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's been passed.
Any
So- Hmm?
suggestions or requests from board members?
Right.
I would encourage the city over time to just look and see if maybe Emeryville is ready to transition to a true public transportation service as things change.
well, the management plan said that the members of the corporation would approve the new governance structure, and you haven't done that. You violated the rules of the ballot measure, so.
Ken,
That's why I have to say, if you don't like it, tough.
Okay. Thank you.
so one suggestion or comment, under these new bylaws, there will be an expanded business member list. The city has the opportunity to nominate 2 residential members. So, Ronnie, can you just remind us when that'll all,
So
when the elections occur?
the elections, the nominations will be called for.
Wait, the city says that you have to put some members in here?
No.
The city is nominating the, or appointing the
Our
residential
bylaws
members.
allow the city to pick the 2 residential board members.
So
That's not
we,
supposed
the
to happen.
TMA is charged with doing the election for the 2 business members, and we'll be posting a request for nominations on our website. We will like the nominations to be in shortly thereafter. I'll give the deadlines. And then we will be mailing ballot forms to all business members of the organization, which can be sent in via proxy or in person at the meeting. We will target a May membership meeting. We currently have the date picked as the 3rd Thursday of the month, which is our typical standard date. However, if the election process is going to take longer than that, I might push that meeting out, and I'll request attendance and availability for that meeting if we need to push that meeting out.
I'm gonna hold a citywide meeting of the residents.
At the annual membership meeting, the directors will be, those with the highest number of votes will be elected, and the employer members will also run their own election as well, with 5 members to serve on the board of directors.
Yes.
1 member, sorry, based on those 5 members.
what does it do with the city? I don't know if this is the power of the board, but I think it's important, is when the city sent out the ballots, they asked for, I believe they had a list that they sent to the property owners with their number of units, their assessed values, square footage, and there was a provision for making corrections. So they made a mistake. Say you had a building that had 12 units, and they said you had 10 units. Whatever. There was never a response to the corrections. Does the board have it in its power to follow up and find out why?
Now, if that's really the city's issue, we are very interested that everyone's billed accurately.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Correct.
You know, not, not too much, but certainly also not too little, right? And so
Correct.
but the city has
The administrator.
that administrative function. So, I would encourage you to aggressively pursue them, and I would have no concern if you find that that's not proceeding efficiently, that you give us that feedback at a future
Yeah.
meeting, because that isn't something I don't think we would hope is true.
I don't think so.
I think there was also some question in the city, I don't want to speak for the city, but I know when we dealt with that as property owners, mistakes on the list, that they also had some reference to the county records
Yeah, that's
as
usually what
well.
we refer to.
So it
Right.
sounds
The
like it's
biggest
a
mistakes
two-layer.
made with it, you may be put in the wrong area as opposed to 7-day or 5-day service location next to bus stops, etc. That's one of the more serious
Yeah.
errors can be made.
I remember that.
Well, I will tell you, they do have the ability to change, because a number of years ago, we found they were under-assessing one of our properties, and we just didn't feel comfortable with that. And we brought it to their attention, and they were able to change that.
You are a good citizen.
So I know it can be done. Now, whether there's as much incentive to, I think accuracy should be reflected whether it increases or decreases, but
Yes.
I know it can happen.
And I have one other question, if I may. When it comes to the yearly allowable increases, the way the vote was proposed, it was a 5% per year increase to the assessment.
It could be that.
It could be a maximum of that amount. Does the board have the power to raise that or lower that?
So
They don't
The
have to raise it
assessment's
at all.
fixed, so the
They don't have to raise it
assessment.
at all.
Just a question.
the assessment would stay, if the board makes a recommendation to the council for an increase. If the board chooses, they can choose to recommend a 0 increase, or they can choose to recommend a 5% increase, or a 2.5% increase.
Depending on the way you see the budget.
Depending on the
going
needs of the
and
organization.
your income and expense.
Exactly. And then the council is the one that has to approve that. So they
There have
have
been,
the ultimate decision.
there
and
have been
power.
years where our request of a budget was nominally less than the
Yeah.
amount collected.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the city determines what to do in that instance.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Can I make a public comment?
Go ahead.
What is obviously going on here is the city wears two different hats. And that's the confusion. The city acts as an escrow agent, and it also acts as an outside advisor that has power. And what was always said is no taxation without representation. And it's kind of odd that the original board, which was composed of corporate members, is voting on a future situation on a future board that has a different makeup. And I think that's where the confusion and the anger and representation aspect really lies here. It's a very hybrid form of our democracy or our legislation.
Well, some would say it's not unlike the Senate as opposed to the House of Representatives, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's not a surprising form, and it is a private entity. I like to really come back to think that we're all paid nothing, spend our time and energy to try to run a system that's valuable most efficiently. And we do that as a private group, and we certainly aren't just sort of a puppet for city desires. Absolutely not. So, and I, as a board member, I want to continue to approach it that way.
Would you like to get paid?
I don't think that would help improve the efficiency of this board. It would make it more complicated, to be honest.
I think we're actually all being paid.
Okay, anything else? If not, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.